Hey, Money Magicians, how are you? So, welcome to episode 80 of the Money Magic podcast. So, it seems like for the next few episodes, and I want to say probably up until episode 100, we're going to be talking about travels a lot. So, today's guest is Kirstin Wilson, and she is from Bad Ass Digital Nomads. I did a podcast interview with them, and it was so much fun. I've also asked Kirsten to come on here and share her journey of being a nomad, because you guys are constantly asking me about how I get to live and travel in different countries. And I think it's just nice not to always have my voice as the voice around travel. So welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to talk with you again and be on your podcast as well. I've been listening to it myself. I have like a whole list of episodes that I want to listen to.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm sure for most women anyway, they love the episodes on the womb and money.
Oh yeah, that's on my list too.
So
It's so
I'm not sure if those also intrigued you.
Definitely.
Yeah, so Kirsten, tell us, who are you as a soul? How do you define yourself as a soul? And then tell us, what do you do for a living?
Oh, wow. That is a great kickoff question. I've always thought of myself as an old soul, possibly because so many people told me that when I was younger. When I was younger, I always had so many friends that were older than me. And as I've gotten older, I have so many friends that are also younger than me. So I think maybe when I was so young, everyone was older. So I had, friends that were like 20, 30 and more years older. And I feel that my soul's path in this life is to be an example of how people can achieve personal freedom and independence in their lives, whatever that means to them. I feel that part of my role is being a teacher, but also being that example. So by living my truth and living my best life, I can inspire other people without forcing it, like just showing examples of what's possible and letting whatever resonates with them help them on their journeys. When I was younger, I was always put into leadership positions, not by choice, but by community census, if that makes sense. Ever since I can remember.
Makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, since elementary school, middle school, like I was always nominated for a president of this club or an officer of the school or cheerleading captain or the president of the junior women's club or whatever it was. And I didn't really ever want that role, but I would just be nominated for those positions. And then I got a scholarship in college for this lead scholars program. So I was always led in this path of leadership, but almost like accidental leadership, or which I actually think is the best type of leader. I always look at politicians and world leaders, and I always think that the best leaders are the ones that don't necessarily want to be there. They're there out of a sense of obligation and duty to themselves and to their commitment that they made in this life, and also to the people around them to like do what's best for the community and for the collective, and not in a selfish way or an egocentric way, which is what a lot of people do.
That's really interesting. I never looked at it that way, actually. So what do you do? You've done all the stuff. What do you do in your daily life and to make money?
I do a lot of different things. And for a long time, I just thought I was finding myself, or I thought that it was a negative. I believed in the myth that a jack of all trades is a master of none. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I heard the rest of the quote, which goes jack of all trades, master of none, oftentimes better than master of one. And so that my whole life up until 2
What?
years ago, yeah, I thought that it was bad to have a variety of interests and be a multi-passionate entrepreneur. And now I know that it's the way it's supposed to be, and that humans are multifaceted and we can all have different interests and accomplish different things in seemingly unrelated areas that all fit together. So to explain what I'm doing now is I've been a consultant for a long time, real estate consultant, relocation consultant. I've also helped people with their online businesses and remote jobs. But a big part of, I think, what the next phase of my life is being a content creator and creating a media company that provides inspiration and information for the future of work. So that's related to how to travel, how to be location independent, how to make money through freelancing or monetizing your skills. And I've done that through podcasts, videos, writing my first book, which is called Digital Nomads for Dummies, which I have it right here. And yeah, so I guess that would be considered.
Oh, do show us.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
is
so
it out
cool.
on Amazon?
It's out now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. This is amazing.
I can send you a copy. Just remind me after the interview, I'll get your address in Mexico and I'll send you one.
Oh, thank you so much. I deeply appreciate that. Exciting to me. Okay, so let's start right there. So the one question I love to ask everyone, which is if money, I'm always fascinated by this before we even dig into digital nomads. If an alien came to planet Earth and asked, what is money? How would you define money to an alien?
I would say that money is a universally agreed upon exchange of value and assessment of value. So it's a way to attribute value to something, and it's an exchange of energy as well. It's almost a token of appreciation or acknowledgement that value is being provided to you. So it's a system of balance in the world, and it's taken many material forms: paper, fabric, metals, beads, shells, food. It can be any material item where people agree that it has a certain value.
I love it. I love that. So my next question, which is directly tied to money also, is this idea that for most people, they believe that they can't start traveling and live a life of being a nomad and traveling and working from anywhere in the world, being location independent. What would you say to those people? And can you start by telling us your journey of making the decision to become a digital nomad? How did this come about?
Yes, it started when I was able to study abroad during college. And I was the epitome of a broke college student. And I am so glad I was able to study abroad, because from the very, very, very beginning of my international travels, I was aware that you didn't need a lot of money to travel, that you could actually have a lower cost of living by traveling compared to living in the United States. So my cost of living in Costa Rica was less than living in Florida. My cost of living in Australia at the time was less than living in Florida. And I can remember talking to my friends back then and being like, how is it that I'm living in this nice apartment on the beach in Australia for less money than my dorm in Orlando, Florida? And yeah, wow. And so I would tell people that you actually can save money by traveling, especially if you're slow traveling or living in a place for a few months at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. So it can be
Yes.
expensive to go on
Yes.
a luxury vacation or take a luxury cruise or
Mm.
pay your bills at home while you're traveling full time. But if you, if you travel in a more economical way, you can do both. You can have a home base and you can travel. Or if you want to dedicate your current expenses of your rent, utilities, everything like that to living in another place, you just change the city, state, or country that you live in, and you can actually lower your cost of living that way. So you can leave home for a while, a
Mhm.
few months or a few years, and then have that experience and then come back.
That's such a good point. I mean, I think it also depends. Like I'm very lucky in that like I get paid in US dollars from at least half of my clients, and then the other payments are done in South African rands. So it also depends on the currency, right? So it makes it a lot easier to travel in that regard. But if you are coming from a country where the currency is not as strong, it can be a tad bit different, but not impossible. And I don't want to say difficult because that's not true. There's so many ways to travel, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about. Everyone always often assumes that there's one way to travel, like, okay, you either do the luxury travel, you go on vacation, or when you slow travel. But can we talk about the various ways that someone can actually live in a country without breaking the bank? What are some things that people should be looking at when they're choosing countries, making the decision of where to go live, and the kind of things that they should be looking at to make sure that they can afford this and do this as they're starting off?
Yeah, when I lived in Costa Rica and when I lived in Australia as a college student, I used to travel around the country and I would just stay in places that cost like $2 a night or $10 a night. I mean, I stayed in hostels and I stayed in places that were really cheap. So I shopped at the grocery store. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't go out to eat, or I would buy local food. So a plate of food for a couple
Mm-hmm.
dollars, and you can still do that in many countries. So part of it is choosing a country or a destination where the cost of living is already low. That's just going to make your life a lot easier. And
Mm,
you can find out which
yes.
countries have the lowest cost of living by searching on Google, looking up the cost of living index of which countries are the most expensive, least expensive, or cheapest cities. You can do this in your country. You can say, what are the top 10 cheapest places to live in the United States? In Mexico, like you can choose any country you want. And then you can also look up specific
Mm,
cities on sites like numbeo.com, NUMBEO, or expatistan.com,
wow.
teleport.org. There's all these cost of living websites where you can get a ballpark figure of how much it costs to live there. And so that,
Mm,
if you go to a place like Eastern Europe or somewhere in South America, Southeast Asia, there's a lot of places where you can just go where they have a low cost of living to begin with. So that's what I would recommend. And then for
mm,
traveling, once you get there, even if you're living in Europe, you can take ride sharing, you can take cheap flights on economy airlines, you can
mm,
get train tickets, you can take the bus. Like there's so many ways to get around for a low
yeah.
amount of money. And then you'll find that groceries and things like that can be really affordable. And one of my friends just flew in from Egypt and he's like, it's so cheap over there because he's comparing the cost of living to Miami. And then another friend just flew
Yeah,
in
of
from,
course.
yeah, she came from Spain and she's like, oh my gosh, we spent $22 on a coffee and a pastry here in Miami, or $28 or something. So yeah, where you go is
Yeah.
important.
Yes, where you go is important. I think it's actually such great advice. And for me, the other thing that I tell people is also where you go during season and off season. Most places have an on season and off season, and during season, places have the prices go all the way up. Off season, prices go down. And I actually prefer to go to places off season. I remember when I first went to Vietnam and I realized that I was there during their season. The prices were still super affordable because it's Vietnam, but the people, there were just so many tourists. It was crazy. And then when I went back and it was off season in Vietnam, it was just incredible. The beaches were almost empty. I got to do all the things that I wanted to do. I didn't have to worry about going to tour sites early. I could arrive whenever. Such a huge difference. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love traveling off season.
Wow. So, Kristen, how did you make the transition from I'm traveling as a college student to now I'm an adult? I am going to travel and do this. Because it's one thing when you're in college, most people will be like, you don't have many responsibilities. There's not a lot of expectations on you. You can do certain things. Like there's certain things when I started traveling just around Southern Africa when I was in second year of university. But when I decided to, right after varsity in the fourth year, after I finished my fourth year, I decided to just leave the country altogether. And I was no longer in university. And I remember really freaking out emotionally the first few months, being like, what if I've made a terrible mistake? You know, what if this thing isn't going to work out? And I would have sleepless nights, honestly, because I'd call home, check on some of my friends from varsity, and they would have stable jobs and a proper paycheck, and here I was floating somewhere. So the first few months were really scary. So was there an emotional transition when you decided to make the decision to be a nomad after university, no longer as a student, no longer having that, I almost feel like it's a safety net that you get to go back to school. You've got classes, you've got university. And what was that like for you financially as well? What were some of the money mindset shifts that you had to go through?
Well, I didn't become a nomad at first. I was offered a job in Costa Rica working at a real estate office. And the way I made that decision was that I calculated what my entry level salary would be coming out of college, getting a job in Orlando, Florida, because I had a few job offers. I think it was maybe around like 30,000 a month or a year, a month. I wish 32,000 a year, like 28 to 32,000 a year. But this was like 20 years ago. So when I calculated my expenses, I realized that I would be living as a college student. I would not be able to increase my quality of life. And so when I looked at the opportunity to go to Costa Rica, it was all on a commission basis. So I knew that I could have more opportunity to increase my income and have a lower cost of living. So that's what I decided to do. And then the first year, I think I made more than six figures. And so all of my friends were working in cubicles back in the US, and I was living in Costa Rica, making six figures, living on the beach. And I just thought, well, I'll just stay here because my life is way better. And so I thought I would only go for 1 year, but then I ended up staying for 7 or 8 years. And then I became a nomad once the technology caught up with my ambition to the point where I didn't need to be in one place anymore to make money, whether that was in Florida or in Costa Rica. And so that's when I decided to go nomadic. So definitely at first I was afraid of ruining my resume, ruining my future job prospects, like not finding a husband, like all the traditional things that you're supposed to do. But then the longer I was gone, the less I cared what a society was doing and the more focused I was on my own life and just following the seeds and the hints and the clues, because I think that life is sort of like a scavenger hunt. Like you're kind of sure where you're going, but you need to be on the lookout for signs and clues and answers along the way. And so that led me to being a nomad. And by that point, I had enough time and experience living alone in another country, meeting friends, having roommates, solo traveling, that I felt fine going nomadic. It was still unnerving, but I always did it like, okay, this is just 1 year. I'll be a nomad for 1 year. I'll do an around the world trip in 1 year. And then 1 year led to another like 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about that, because I think this is at the core a money and trauma podcast, and we're always interested in the money, right? So how did you then make the decision what were things that you did as you decided, I'm going to transition from this job, even though it's commission based, I'm going to travel, I'm going to transition for this job, and then from this job, and then go nomadic and go traveling? What were some of the things that you did with money to just make it balance out? Because I'm pretty sure you talked about lifestyle. I'm pretty sure you didn't want to be compromising your lifestyle either. You had a particular lifestyle that you wanted as you traveled.
Yeah, I first spent about 1.5 years building an online business before I went nomadic. So I made sure that I could replace my income from real estate commissions with consulting and relocations. And I did that for 1.5 years. And I saved money and I had money coming in every month. And that's when I felt like I could untether from living in Costa Rica. And so I think that's always a good idea, to have a backup plan and to have an income stream coming in before you travel, because traveling is time consuming. It requires energy. And you also want to be able to have fun when you're traveling. So if you are traveling and adapting to a new place and you don't know where your next meal or your next paycheck is coming from, then that puts a lot of stress that is unnecessary.
Yes, my gosh, what you just said, it's just, you focus on one thing, right? Like you can focus like on other things, but if your survival is threatened in any way, like you don't know how you're going to pay for rent, you don't know how you're going to pay for food, how you're going to pay for water, all the basics, it's not fun. I found that like, it wasn't fun for me. I can truly say that wasn't something that was fun for me. But now that you were traveling and you didn't have the safety net that most people have when they're at home, right? Because when you're home, here's the other thing that happens, which you already know, right? But it's that you have your support base, you've got your family, you've got your friends, you've got people that know you from way back when. Well, you know the banking system, so you can try to figure out if you don't have money, how you get a loan, how you do all these things. You know how to maneuver the system. You land in a new country, you know nothing. You don't know where the shops are. You're still going to figure out, where do you buy bread? Where do you pay for electricity? I remember when I got my first electric bill in South Korea, I was like, what am I paying for? What is this? All I see is the numbers in Korean yet. So I was like, and where do I pay? Right?
Yeah.
So then like people were telling me I have to go online and figure it out on the bank. On my bank, I have to get a Korean bank. I went, applied to get a Korean bank account. Then I have to try and figure out how to do this on my Korean bank account, which at the time, maybe now they've changed, but everything is in Korean, right? All these things are so common. Same with Thailand. I'd get my electricity bill in Thailand. I'd be like, what is this? What's going on? How much is my electricity? Which is my water? Which is my electricity? So my whole point is there's a lot of adjustment. So what are some things that you do in terms of calming yourself down and giving yourself, I guess, space, having like that spaciousness to really learn the culture and not to freak out every time you're in a new country? And what are some of them? So, okay, let's go with that. And then I'll ask the next question.
Okay. I do that too. I always ask like questions with 4 questions in them. I would say that when you move to another country, there's always an adjustment period, and there's a lot of time that's spent on tasks that you already know how to do in your home country. And that can be frustrating sometimes. And I can remember many days of just waiting in line at the bank or trying to get a bank account and going 5 times with different documents, and that was never fun.
Yeah.
That's why I do relocations for people, so they don't have to do all of that stuff or know everything, because it takes time away from being a tourist and seeing the sights, from relaxation, from work. Like, it just takes time away from everything. So it's
Yes.
probably one of the costs of the lifestyle that you can mitigate in some ways by getting help from other people, but there's always going to be those unknown things that happen, or you get overcharged in the taxi, or you like go to some place and it's closed because you didn't know it was closed that day. So yeah, those things happen. But that's why staying in a place for a longer time can be helpful, because it can take a few months or even a year sometimes to adjust to the culture there. So if you're
Yeah.
not planning on doing that, then I would try to get everything all inclusive. So talk with your landlord or your Airbnb host about any bills that you would be responsible for and how you pay them. Try to get it wrapped into the rent, or stay at a co-living space like Selena, or
Yes.
somewhere where everything is like all inclusive for you and you just have to show up, and they have the internet there. They have places for you to like cook and prep meals, and a community built in. So you don't feel like you're
Yeah.
starting from zero all the time. And then also to connect with people
Yeah.
before you get there. So use social media to find mutual friends who've been to that place, people who are living there that you might know, even if they're just acquaintances, and just start trying to find people that you know there, join a Facebook group, something like that. And it just takes one person to then connect you with other people. And then all of a sudden you're part of a community. So there are communities specifically for foreigners, like internations, that are full
Yeah.
of people from other countries, and they can usually put you in the right direction or put you in touch with people that can help.
Mm, mm. That's that's really, really great advice. I've often just put out an APB on Facebook to say, who do I know that lives in this country? And then please inbox me. And then I ask my questions from there. It's a bit challenging at times. But my next question was to say, what are some mindset shifts that you had to make with money? So back to the money, make with money when it came to when you had to leave your job, which I will say this, even though commission base is still something constant that you could rely on, and you've just been working on your business for 18 months. So what are some mindset shifts you had to make there? If you can give us 3 mindset shifts around money so that you could continue traveling for years, what are some shifts you made?
I think the most important shift that I made was understanding that I'm capable of generating money. So often in the
Mm,
traditional school system, we are meant to deliver value to an employer that pays us a fixed salary. And I never really had that. I mean, I did when I was in college and stuff, but I just had to realize that I was capable of supporting myself from anywhere, and I didn't
mm,
need to depend on an employer or someone to give me a salary, that I could find a way to make enough money to live. And I think that was the first thing.
yes.
And then after that, it was that I could actually make more money working for myself. So instead of being afraid, like, what if I go broke or what if I run out of money? It was like, what if I could double my income by working for myself and working less hours? Like, what if? And that ended up happening. I was able to work from my laptop. I was able to double and triple my income from real estate. And I didn't have to go
Wow.
out driving around to properties anymore. I could just work from home. And so that saved money and time also. And I guess a third
Mm,
shift was around having control over my expenses, like realizing that I could physically put my place and put myself in a place where I could systematically lower my cost of living and lower my taxes, and that was not a strategy that's taught to the masses. That was something that I figured out by myself and had to have trust and faith that that was something I could do, because it was not anything that anyone told me I could do. It was just something that I came to understand the longer that I traveled and lived abroad. And so that opened my mind to just all of the different ways that, you can create wealth in the world. And wealth creation is partly making money, but it's also partly saving money and investing money. And that's something that's a lifelong journey. I sold my Bitcoin way too early. Let's put it that way. But yeah, but try again.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. And I love what you said about Texas. There's certain things that I've learned in my business because I operate remotely that I don't have, and because I've got clients from different parts of the world, there's certain taxes that they don't have to pay, like that and other things. So it's been a journey, like the things that I'm learning as I'm working remotely, just like you've said. And a lot of this is the practical stuff, right? That we're never really taught about taxes and all the other practical things around money.
No.
So, Kirsten, I wanted to ask, you've mentioned your relocation services a few times. Please, can you tell us what they are and what you do when you're talking about relocation? How do you help people? And when would people contact you on their relocation journey? When is it ideal for them to contact you? A year before they relocate, as they're thinking about it, when they fly out tomorrow?
Sure. So I've been helping people relocate to different countries since 2011, and I plan people's relocations for them. So in that case, we start usually between anywhere up to 6 months before they leave, but typically around 3 months before they leave. But usually I'm in touch with them at least a year in advance. So I think if you want to move in the next 1 to 2 years, that's a good time to get in touch and just talk about your plans and get more of an outline of your strategy. And then that way, you know what to do within 1 year, within 6 months, within 3 months, within 1 month. It's not ideal to call me when you're at the airport or after you've arrived, and because then we're working backwards. But I have a form on my website that's travelingwithkirsten.com/relocation, or they can just click on relocation at the top and fill out a form with their plans, and then we'll get them in the right direction, whether it's working with me one-on-one or in a group setting with other people that are moving within a year as well.
That is awesome, actually. I wish that I'd had such a service. So which are you focused on any? Right, like I'm like, I really, really wish I had such a service. So I'm very, very interested in which countries do you specialize in, or do you just work with people no matter what country they want to move to?
There's definitely patterns in the places that people are interested in moving to. A lot of countries throughout Latin America, Europe, those are probably the top two. But we also have some people that want help going to places in Asia. I haven't done any relocations to Africa yet, probably because I haven't been there. I've been to Cape Verde, but I haven't spent a lot of time living in any African countries. So it's usually like I've been to more than 60 countries. So I feel really comfortable if I've lived in a country or if I've been to that country to do a relocation there. Yeah, so I'll have to explore that part of the world, and also the Middle East, because I haven't really traveled much there. I've been to Cyprus. I've done some relocations there, but there's a lot to explore. throughout all of Asia and Africa. I've pretty much lived mostly in the Americas and North and Central and
Okay.
South America, and also in Europe.
Okay. So what do you offer in the relocation package? I'm very, very fascinated. I'm sure people are listening in and just thinking, I want to move to a different country. What is on offer? Like, can you do everything for me? Because I'm that kind of person. Can I just arrive and be like, here, do everything for me? Just get me the house, get me the bank account, get me everything.
Yeah. I have an option where I work with people one-on-one and I just do everything for them. I plan personally their relocations, and I have, of course, a team to help, but I'm the director of the relocation. So everything from finding housing, well, choosing where to go, because most people aren't even sure which country they want to go to, which is totally normal. So maybe they have 10
Yeah.
places on their list. And so narrowing down like what would be the best place to go, or what would be the best place to start out.
Yeah.
And then through, all you have to do is just show up at the airport on the day that you say you want to get there, and we'll have everything done. Now, some
Wow.
people are involved in choosing the rental property, of course, like they want to give feedback on that and
Yes.
choose where they want to live. They might have to do things like submitting documents in the case of a visa or residency application, something like that. And if they want to change anything with their tax base, then we put them in touch with the right people, like a residency attorney, an accountant, etc. And then with my group coaching
Wow.
program, it's more, so that's like the done for you service when I do it one-on-one, and
Mm-hmm.
even down to airport pickup, shopping trips, orientation, groceries, SIM cards,
Wow.
internet setup, utilities, bill payment, like we do everything. And then the bank
Wow.
accounts, translators, like everything. And then on the other side with the group coaching, I provide people with the structure for how to plan their relocation and what to do in what order. And there's 8 steps of a relocation. So I give them the tools and resources to do it. And then I'm there on a weekly basis with a live Q&A call to answer their questions. So I give them the structure, they do the work, but then they have me to come to if they have questions or if they get stuck. And most people start that between 3 months and 1.5 years before the relocation, sometimes even 2 years before, because they don't want to spend the next 2 years wondering what they should be doing. They just want to have the format and know what to do and when, so that they can have peace of mind for the next couple years before they leave.
Whoa, this is amazing. I'm always fascinated because my travels are usually like, oh, I think I'm going to go there tomorrow, pack up and leave. Like I've often done that. It's like a 24, 36-hour max move. The amount of times, especially I think worse in Asia, like when I was living out there for the last 7 years, it was just like, I'd wake up and be like, today feels like a good day to go to Malaysia. Hop online, get a ticket, and be flying a few hours later. So, and then I'd be like, oh, let me find someone to rent my space and just be gone for like 3-4 months. It was definitely, I've often traveled like that. So this is so fascinating for me. I genuinely didn't know any of the things that you've just mentioned, because I'm usually, and I think after a while, you kind of doing this automatically in whatever country you move to. So if I know I'm going to be in Mexico for 6 months, I already have the list in my head and I'm just kind of doing it without even thinking. So I think that's the big thing. It's just like, after a while, you start to do it as a nomad. So I
But
guess
how
one
many
of
years did it take
my
for you to do that?
gosh, because right, so I think that it's maybe like 3 or 4 years, and then definitely I think I lie. Probably by the 7th year, it's when I was able to start traveling as I wished and wanted, because the money was always a huge thing, because every time you're moving, you're literally signing a new lease for 6 months. So that's deposit and rent. You're waiting to get your deposit from whatever country you're in, unless you choose to keep your apartment, which is why I started keeping my apartments, right? So that was the big thing for me. And then the other thing was just plane tickets. Flight tickets can become very costly, especially if you're flying across continents. And then just in terms of rearranging my schedule with clients. So when I had more money, one of the things that I could do, more money coming into the business, I could hire more people, which then gave me more flexibility to make decisions at the spur of the moment, because I had more systems in place, I had more support, I could do more because I had the freedom in terms of a business that had a solid foundation, you know? And then also because I didn't worry so much about, oh, you're buying a flight ticket 24 hours or 12 hours before time. And then it wasn't so crazy for me if I didn't find an Airbnb I liked, because then I can just book a hotel, you know? So a lot of things started to shift in my business. And I think this started to ramp up a lot when I hit 6 figures in my business, because things started to radically shift. I could get more support. And I think for me, that's been the interesting thing that people constantly ask. And maybe this is, I'll abandon my last question that I was going to ask you and just ask this, like, what are some systems and operations that you had to put in place to have the flexibility to travel? Because there's a lot going on. If you're going to see 60 countries, if you've been to 60 countries, that's time away from work, from your business, all that. So how do you do that? What are some things that you did that were completely life-changing for your business to give you the flexibility to travel? Because it's not just the money, it's also time.
Yes. So I focus on working with people that they've either never lived abroad before, or they're in the first few years of doing it, because not everyone wants to take on the challenge and the risk of traveling for 5 years, 7 years before they like figure things out, you know? And so I'm here to make that process easier, because what we did was just jump in the deep end and figure it out. And it takes years to become an expert expat. And so that's,
Amen.
that crash course
I
that we
agree.
went through. Yeah. Like not everyone wants to go through that or feels like they have to do that. Once I started traveling nomadically and working online, I had contractors in different places that would do different things, like a airport driver in Barcelona and in San Jose, Costa Rica. And so I had different people for different things. And I just was a project manager from my computer, managing all of the different pieces of the relocation. But I also traveled specifically for my business. So I went to places where I wanted to help people relocate, because a lot of people wanted to go there. And so for me to help them, I had to live there. And so a big part of the countries I was traveling to was to learn the system, to spend 3 months there, 6 months there, open bank accounts, figure out the utilities and the internet, all the stuff that you do when you get to another country. So it was a very intentional form of travel, or it was going somewhere because there was a conference I wanted to go to or an event I wanted to go to. And so even though I've traveled a lot, and I've certainly had times where I went to a different city or a different country every day or every week, and I really wasn't getting anything done then, I would take time off work during those times. But what's really made it work for me was just being intentional about where I was going and having a reason to go there and leveraging my location to get things done. So I wanted to write a book. So I went to the mountains. Like I literally got an apartment with a view of a mountain at the top of this mountain. And I just sat there and wrote my book every morning because I could focus there. I couldn't focus when I was living in Lisbon because there were meetups every day, and it's super loud there. Like the streets are loud, like
Yeah.
there's parties everywhere. Like I just couldn't get anything done. So it's also going to a place where you're going to be productive. And I went to Estonia by myself. I went to Poland. I went to all of these rogue places, Norway, where I could really focus and get stuff done. And then I would take time off and go places that were more social and more for fun.
That's such good guidance. Is there anything in particular that you did in your business? Just one thing, apart from having contractors in place, is there anything else and being intentional that helped you to continue running the business as you traveled?
Yeah, having a really good project management system and software. So I use Basecamp, but if you use Trello or Asana or Monday, like having a good project management system and systems and processes in place is really helpful. And I also took a tip from Tim Ferriss, and I stopped living in my email inbox. I would only check my email once, maybe twice per day. And so I was not letting email tell me what to do for work. I just used my
Yes.
project management system with calendar, appointments, reminders, and things that other people could access it and everyone can get their work done. And
Yes.
I scaled slowly. So I actually would grow my team, and if I felt like it was too many people, I would prune it and go back to basics. So I really recommend for people to start simple and start small and only add extra help one at a time when you have a specific role for that person, and that prevents your costs from spiraling out of control. But I mean, to this day, I still use project management system and that's like the center of my business.
Well, your business has a lot of moving parts because you've got various clients at different stages of relocation. So your project management needs to be on point. Kirsten, you've given us so much. This has been, yes, deadlines. You need to know when to pick up people from the airport, all that. I think it's so super powerful. But you're also helping me realize that there's that one of the things that I need to start adding in for my retreats is possibly project management systems because I'm working with my concierge, and we've done well on this retreat in Mexico, which is happening. This episode will air after the retreat, but the retreat is happening a week from now. But yeah, exactly. Next Thursday, it's hectic. So what I did, same as you with being intentional, how I started, as my business started to grow and scale, I started to go to countries with the intention of, well, at least I choose like 3 or 4 countries now in a year. And I say, choose 2. If you're going to live for 6 months, the ones that you're going to live long-term in, those are the ones that I'm going to do a retreat in, so that in those 6 months, like you said, you're on the ground, you're getting the connections, you're building the networks, and then I host a retreat in those countries because then I know that I'm there, but I'm also making money from being here, which is great for business, right? Because, and for many reasons, that some things can be taken off as a business expense because I'm here generating a revenue from here.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I get that intentional travel. Yeah. So Kirsten, people are listening to you and they're like, wow, I need to know this woman. How do they get hold of you?
Sure. By YouTube, Traveling with Kirsten. So just search Traveling with Kirsten on YouTube or youtube.com/traveling with Kirsten. And that's also my website, travelingwithkirsten.com. And I have a weekly podcast called Bad Ass Digital Nomads that is in its 170th episode this week. So we have a lot to choose from, and you can find all of those badassdigitalnomads.com. And then for the step-by-step recipe for how to become a digital nomad and be able to travel and work from anywhere, you can pick up a copy of my brand new book, Digital Nomads for Dummies, in any bookstore Amazon, Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, you name it.
Oh, this is so exciting. So guys, go check it out. Get the book on Amazon, look at Traveling with Kirsten on YouTube, go to the website. And if you're looking to relocate, definitely check out Kirsten. She's doing some incredible work, as you can hear, in the digital nomad space, and listen to the podcast, Bad Ass Digital Nomads. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Kirsten. It's been such a pleasure to have you. And Money Magicians, we will see you next week with another incredible episode.
Bye.
Bye.